Okay, let's jump right into this. Now, if you've been following true crime lately, you've definitely heard about the Mackenzie Shirilla case. And, a recent viral documentary painted this really compelling picture of a tragic accident, a grieving young woman, and a family just fighting tooth and nail for her innocence. But in this explainer, we're going to step totally away from those heavily edited, super emotional TV narratives. Instead, we're heading straight into the courtroom to look objectively at the hard physical evidence that prosecutors brought to the table, the exact evidence that absolutely secured a double murder conviction.
So here's what we're going to cover today. First, accident or double murder. Second, motive, a toxic romance. Third, the digital evidence. Fourth, behavior after the crash. And finally, the verdict and aftermath.
All right, Section 1, accident or double murder, the core conflict. To set the scene, on July 31, 2022, 17-year-old Mackenzie Shirilla crashed her car into a brick wall, tragically killing her boyfriend Dominic Russo and their friend Devon Flanagan. Now, during the trial, it was basically like looking at two completely different realities. On one side, the defense is claiming this was just a horrific accident, a sudden medical blackout, innocent young love cut short. But on the flip side, the prosecution is painting a massively different picture. Aggravated murder times 2, completely purposeful intent, and a really, really toxic romance.
Moving to Section 2, motive, a toxic romance, beyond the pictures.
So, to prove intent, prosecutors first had to completely dismantle this whole myth of a happy, perfect relationship. Listen to this direct quote from a phone call between Mackenzie and Dominic that was actually admitted into evidence. Dominic's family testified that the two fought all the time and exchanged some pretty serious threats. And hearing Mackenzie threaten that Dominic wasn't coming out of the house because she wouldn't leave, well, it provides a really chilling glimpse into a highly volatile, controlling dynamic. It literally laid the groundwork for the prosecution's motive.
Which brings us to Section 3, the digital evidence, what the data revealed.
Okay, so motive is one thing, right? But to get a murder conviction, prosecutors desperately needed objective data to shut down the defense's claims, and they did this systematically. The defense claimed Mackenzie blacked out unpredictably. Well, cell phone records prove she'd actually scoped out the exact area of the crash days prior. The defense said it was a tragic accident. The car's black box data showed the gas pedal was literally floored to 100% with absolutely zero effort to brake. And yeah, police found marijuana in the car, but prosecutors argued that because she was a regular user with a very high tolerance, she wasn't impaired to the point of causing an accident. She was fully aware and intentional.
And that brings us to this absolutely terrifying number 100. That is the exact speed, 100 miles per hour, that Mackenzie was driving at 5:30 in the morning. Video evidence at the trial showed her rounding a corner, totally in control, at a totally normal speed, right before actively flooring the accelerator and steering directly into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. Just let that sink in.
Next up, Section 4, behavior after the crash, the shocking lack of remorse.
You see, physical data was only part of the prosecution's strategy. They also used Mackenzie's own choices after the crash to prove her state of mind. They handed the court this list of actions she took while the investigation was still going on. She sought employment with an LA modeling agency. She actually asked a classmate to sneak into Dominic's room to get photos for his casket so he could, and I quote, "be with me forever," which investigators saw as incredibly manipulative. She attended a concert in a wheelchair shortly after. And, perhaps craziest of all, she was seen driving a car around town again, completely contradicting her mother's testimony that she had dizzy spells that required salt pills. The court looked at all this not as a devastated victim, but as someone trying to capitalize on a tragedy.
To really hammer this point home, prosecutors actually read this message Mackenzie sent to that modeling agency shortly after the crash. I mean, while her mother was claiming she spent months crying in bed next to a shrine of Dominic, the community was literally sending police screenshots of Mackenzie eagerly trying to kickstart a modeling career. Prosecutors used this stark contrast to show the judge what they rightfully called a shocking lack of remorse.
And finally, Section 5, the verdict and aftermath, the final judgment. In 2023, Mackenzie chose a bench trial, which means a judge decides her fate instead of a jury. Now, despite an apology where she somehow still claimed she had no memory of the event, and her mother basically begging for leniency, the judge just wasn't buying the blackout story. Based on the digital data and her post-crash behavior, the judge systematically found her guilty across all 12 of these devastating charges, including 4 counts of murder and 4 counts of felonious assault.
Before handing down the sentence, the trial judge delivered these super powerful closing words that just cut straight through all the family's excuses.
The judge stated, "When there is a purposeful intent to harm or kill someone, it is the perpetrator alone who bears the responsibility for the choice and the consequences." The judge made it crystal clear the blame rested entirely and solely on Mackenzie's deliberate actions that morning, no one else's.
So, the final sentence was a mandatory 15 years to life in an Ohio prison. To put that into perspective, it means the absolute earliest Mackenzie could possibly even face a parole board is the year 2038. She'll be around 34 years old, and the judge strongly noted there's a very good chance she'll spend the rest of her natural life behind bars.
But of course, the legal maneuvering didn't just end there. After the guilty verdict and sentencing in August 2023, her defense team planned to appeal, arguing there wasn't enough evidence for intent. But look at this timeline. They filed the appeal on October 24th, and then in March 2024, the appeals court rejected it outright. Why? Get this, it wasn't even based on the facts of the case. Her highly paid legal team filed the paperwork exactly 1 day past the deadline. They literally tried to argue that it was a leap year, but the court was like, nope, and shut the whole process down over a procedural error.
And honestly, the fallout is still happening today, really impacting her whole family. Mackenzie's father, who unapologetically defended her in the documentary and was literally caught on camera screaming at police during her arrest, has now faced his own consequences. After that documentary came out, he was placed on administrative leave from his job teaching art at a Catholic school, with the administration specifically citing poor judgment.
So, all of this leaves us with a pretty heavy final thought. When we watch these true crime documentaries, we're usually being fed a story perfectly curated to make us feel a certain way, right? But as this explainer clearly shows, when you strip away the moody music and the tearful interviews, and you look purely at the black box data, the cell phone pings, and the actual courtroom transcripts, a completely different reality emerges. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Does a highly edited media narrative ever tell the full story, or does the real truth only actually emerge in the cold, indisputable facts of the courtroom? Thanks for learning with me today.